Hi. As many of you know, I own a throttle body injected Dodge truck. Now there are some issues with those electronically, things of that nature. They're just old trucks, got an old style fuel injection system on them. I got to looking at it and I thought, boy, the throttle bodies are only so big, that kind of thing, and there's some, I think, just a little bit of waking up to be done with them. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just throw a throttle body spacer and a set of headers on it at some point in time. A little bit of an exhaust and just be done with it. Nothing fancy. They don't make a throttle body spacer for this truck. So, to the internet I go. I looked and looked and looked and looked and looked, couldn't find one. So I bought a throttle body rebuild kit. Rented her 2 gaskets. I took one of the gaskets and I traced it onto some material I bought online. Now this material, I'll look up the name again, but I bought it about a month ago, maybe more. But I needed to cut it with a bandsaw, so I had to buy a small bandsaw. You'll see me cutting here in a little bit. The bandsaw is a benchtop model, so I brought it outside because I'm pretty sure you shouldn't inhale the dust from these things, and I figured that would probably be most of the cuts with that. The guides are missing a few pieces. I didn't pay a whole lot for the saw. I've just been kind of tinkering with it. New tires on it, new blade. Got to get a couple little bearings for it, so you'll see me struggling a little bit with that. But yeah, traced it out, and we're making a throttle body spacer for a TBI Dodge today. This is the bandsaw in question. Bit of a project saw. The guides aren't quite right on it, and sorry about the wind blowing here where I'm recording, but it's so nice out I just couldn't help myself. This is actually sped up at like 4 times speed, but I'm having to go real slow. This stuff is just exceedingly dense. There is no air in it, and yeah, I was able to bring it outside. I'm pretty sure you shouldn't breathe the dust from this stuff. And I bought it as a remnant on eBay, where I buy a lot of my ultra high molecular weight plastics and things of that nature. But this is something that was going to be needed to be fuel resistant, needed to be heat resistant, that kind of thing. So I went ahead and made my first 2 big cuts to remove material, because I don't want to try and spin the blade in this. It just doesn't really have, it's so dense it won't cut its own path when you try and spin it. So we're just making a bunch of relatively straight cuts here, and I'll pay for that later with sanding, but it is what it is. The little blade, it's a wood blade, actually did a pretty good job aside from making a massive mess. But as I mentioned, it happened outdoors, and that's okay. I'm okay with a massive mess as long as it's just the dust that's outdoors, and when I do some leaf blowing later, that'll fix itself. See, we're getting here pretty close. Get engaged on these corners, twist just a little bit, and as I said, I'll pay for this later when it comes time to finish sand and that kind of thing. And just been an interesting little project. I don't know why there isn't one commercially available. They made these trucks for a small number of years, and I guess that's the biggest reason. They make them for the Magnums, but not these. And of course, carbureted vehicles have all kinds of performance support. Here we stepped into the drill press. I'm going to do some things somebody's not going to like here. The first thing I'm going to mention is that I loosened the belt. It's a belt-driven drill press, and in loosening it, I created a slipper clutch. Go ahead and get our first cut, our second cut. I don't have a good way of finding center on these easily, and be honest with you, I just wanted to get it done. I also didn't have any clamps anymore that weren't pointed, exceedingly harsh. I don't want to, even though this stuff has a great rating for point of impact, yeah. I didn't want to do that, so we used a soft jawed clamp, modified it. Just took that pin out of the back and just kind of going through how that works. I've already got 2 cuts started, and I know it's a hole saw. We're literally just using it as a saw. There's nothing fancy about it. Probably my feed rate was a little high. See how it's sticking a little bit when it stops? It's actually sort of melting back together. It's really tough stuff, really dense. I could use compressed air. There's a small shop vac in the background of the picture here. The thing is, it's so fine a dust, I think it would escape from the back of the shop vac and become airborne. And as much as possible, I don't want this dust to be airborne. It's just, I think it's really nasty stuff. I'm not 100%. I'm not saying it'll just out and out cause cancer, but it's nasty. It's real fine. It would probably make most people itch. It's just nasty. So we're going ahead and cutting the second piece here. Notice how many more times we're clearing chips there in an effort to not bog down, but even then it's trying to melt the stuff. It's real hot. Those plugs I'm pulling out are very, very warm. Step over the other room, don't have another hole saw bigger, so we're just going to use this one to cut the contours in that middle piece. Now I should be able to drill a little faster here, and I believe it did. I believe I am, I guess, because there's space for the dust and chips to go. And we'll go ahead and start one, and then while we've got it, we start the other. You can see that massive rain of crap falling out the bottom. Once again, this is sped up, so I know you can tell from watching it, but it's just one of those things. I have a customer here, so we're going to stop the voice. Alright, so yeah, using this saw, cutting out pieces, and that's yeah, that actually went really well. Worked better than I thought it probably would. And this is the first time I've drilled just a hole in this material. Try to get those centered up. Again, I didn't center punch these because I didn't want to make like a little point in it that might at some point in time chip. I know I would have drilled past it, but you know, epoxy based materials are kind of funny. I did manage to stall the drill a few times. As I said, I loosened that belt up quite a bit, and I don't run it that tight. I need it to be a little bit of a slipper clutch, just for safety reasons. I do a lot of stuff that's really hard to clamp, and I need it to be a safety thing. I know some people would tell me to wear gloves at this point. Not only is that stuff sharp, you know, whatever, but gloves have a tendency to get caught in things, and nobody wants that. So we drilled our first set of holes. They were a little bit bigger, but I didn't want to chance a smaller drill bit in this material. As it were to get hot and kind of burr up, I didn't want to chance breaking it. I didn't know what would be involved in getting it out. You can see I did manage to stall it twice there, but again, the belt is so loose, once it stalls, it just kind of stops. Again, and this is not normally where I stand or anything when I'm drilling something with this. I know you're not supposed to stand off side of it, but I wanted the camera to have a halfway decent angle. Look, cat. It's Sassy Cat. She was in a couple of our other videos. She's my helper. Yeah. Oh no. Alright, go kill something. If I weighed 30 pounds, I'd hunt deer with it. So we're just trying to get all these holes drilled. It's really nothing fancy at this point. It's just a traced gasket that we're turning into a spacer. And that's that. So we're gonna step over. I keep an angle grinder mounted to this post. Use just some wood screws and some pieces of dog chain. And I'm shaping more than sanding at this point. I use those cheap flap wheels on it because a flap wheel doesn't tend to explode. And I use this grinder on stuff that I need a certain angle or something on. Something where I don't want to have to grab something with one hand and then grab the part with another hand, sander and all that. And it's safer for a variety of reasons. Also not pictured in this is the foot pedal that I got from Harbor Freight, which I use to power it. So if something were to happen, it's just a stomp and it turns itself off. So we did most of the shaping there. We're going to go real quick around these edges because they are pretty sharp. As far as if you cut a piece of wood, it wouldn't be that sharp. Cut a piece of metal, it probably would. But I'm going to be handling this above the truck. You know, I'm going to be out there doing it, and step over and set up out here and start hand sanding this. It's pretty tough stuff. It even sands hard. You wouldn't think that some sort of epoxy resin type thing would really get that hard, but boy, it sure did. And I'm thankful because that means it'll probably last a long time. I did go through and take, not pictured as one of the cutoffs, smaller pieces. I took and doused it in gasoline, made sure it didn't break down, it didn't get gummy. I sprayed it with ether, that kind of thing. Briefly hit it with a MAP gas torch. I think, except for the fact that it discolored, I think we're going to be just fine in our application for this. It didn't seem to break down at all. Like I said, it didn't get gummy. Nothing could be scraped off with a razor blade at that point. Nothing. So going back and just continuing to hand sand this. As I mentioned, my kids out here, some of my more or less adopted children that come out and work on their stuff, or some young men that come out and work on their machines, and I try and help them out. If they need a part and I can't afford it, I sometimes let them work it off, depending on the situation and how well I know the kid as to if they'll actually show up. You know, they're going to be out here playing with this stuff, and they need to learn how it works and how to do things, and in doing so they need to see, you know, this is how you make something, but they're going to be handling it, and just a cut somewhere can be bad. I mean, these kids play baseball or basketball, they have jobs at fast food restaurants or local places, and aside from what they do with me here, and if I were to injure one of them even accidentally, I would feel bad even if it was just something small. So that's that, guys. We managed to make a car, or a throttle body spacer, excuse me. And that's it. Alright, here I sit again. Got her done. Doesn't look too bad. A couple little scratches on it, and it needs quite a bit more sanding. I hand sanded it to keep the sharp edges down. My son is 6. He comes out here and plays. He helps pick up stuff, that kind of thing, and this stuff's pretty hard. I was afraid he'd cut himself, and I'm sure there's some people that come out here to shop that will want to see it, and I was afraid they might get scratched or cut or anything, and I just kind of wanted to see how it's sanded and that kind of thing. So I did some hand sanding on it. Questionable practices with the drill press. Drill press is real heavy. It's an old Walker Turner. Yeah, it belonged to a school at one point in time, 40s model. But we got her, and I will go through the finishing and installation of that in another video. But thank you so much for watching. I know it was a long one, and if you managed to soldier through, thank you.